Strap in and be prepared.
Maybe I'll learn from your failures.
That is what you could do.
Yeah.
Interesting guests.
Kelly Graves, Mike Parker, Josh Pate, George Reiser, Ryan Lee, Yogi Roth, who said that Justin and I are smart.
Sharp opinions.
I think Dan Lanning sitting in his office going, you know what, fine, give us the toughest road to win the national championship. That's what it should be.
Oregon State in their baseball program is still operating from a position of strength, even if they're independent. But here they are in the College World Series.
And some smiles.
It's iconic.
We're not keeping score, but maybe we're keeping score.
The fastest 60 minutes in sports is on the air. It's Danny Havel.
When I wake up every morning, I say to myself, what can I do to make Baby J's life better today?
Justin Grossweiner.
Have I ever told you, Danny, that growing up I really loved ducks?
Danny and Justin starts now on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Danny's taking a day off for load management. Here's Justin.
Hello, and welcome to the Danny and Justin Show. That's right, Danny is load managing, and it will be the Just Justin Show today, but I've got a good show planned for you today, I think. There's a lot to talk about, surprisingly, as we've entered the dog days of summer, but we still have some Oregon football to talk about, as Oregon cannot land a commitment from Ryder Lyons this morning, as he announced on Pat McAfee that he'll be heading to BYU after his year-long mission. We're going to bring on El Toro, Max Torres. It feels like a good day to bring on him to talk about it, as well as Oregon's QB room outlook as that domino falls. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And the Portland Trailblazers made a surprising trade last night that I think shocked pretty much just about everyone. There were some mixed reviews around the NBA universe, and I'll give my thoughts about that trade and, of course, the drafts coming up tomorrow. We're, I'm guessing, about 20-something hours away, 26 hours away maybe. I don't actually know what the time the draft is tomorrow. I'm assuming it's after our show, probably at 4 or 5 o'clock. But it'll be an interesting draft now, especially with the Anfernee Simons trade and that domino that falls, and we'll see what the Blazers do. I'll talk about that move and what I think about it. But I want to start off with Oregon's quarterback situation. And I just want to talk to the Oregon football fans out there that are a little bit perturbed. I think Oregon football fans are a little bit nervous right now, some of them at least, about Oregon's recruiting. And Ryder Lyons is just kind of another one of these dominoes that have fallen where Oregon has not quite closed the deal. And I want to talk to Max Torres about this in just about 17 minutes or so. But after Jared Curtis goes to Georgia, it seemed like Ryder Lyons, who was going to be taking a mission, as everyone knows at this point, in 2026, more likely a 2027 quarterback, he heads to BYU now. So he kind of made more sense based on what Oregon's quarterback room looks like. And, of course, you have Dante Moore and Austin Novosad, who are redshirt sophomores. So those are the guys that you're looking as possibly the next couple years. It looks like Dante Moore is going to be the starting quarterback. I saw someone on Twitter today kind of saying, hey, I think people kind of forget how good Dante Moore is. And, I think you're right. I think Dante Moore actually is pretty good. And we have this perception of him because of what we saw from him on the field last at UCLA, which was, by the way, over a season ago now. So that's a couple years ago now. He's developed under Will Stein in this Oregon program. So I think you got to start there. Is it Dante Moore is probably going to be the quarterback for at least the next couple seasons. Austin Novosad, who is, I guess you could call him a friend of the program. He's at least played golf with Danny. He seems like he's a nice guy. Certainly has an opportunity in that quarterback room as well. Whenever we've seen Austin Novosad has been pretty impressive. He's certainly not been the kind of guy you look at and go like, I'm not so sure. He certainly looks like he has some potential as well. And then you also have Luke Moga, who is a redshirt freshman. Luke Moga is one of the most athletic guys probably on the team. Certainly the fastest quarterback in that room. He's had some potential. And then Achilles Smith Jr. And yes, I was a little bit before the Achilles Smith time, so I didn't get to witness that up close and personal. But if he is anything remotely close to what his dad is, and by the way, he's a true freshman this season, so he certainly will have an opportunity maybe in 2028. I mean, if he stays, of course, there's all this movement now in college football, the NIL and the transfer portal and all that stuff, but seems like he's a guy that you look at as potentially a 2028 after you have Dante Moore in 2025 and 2026. I guess you could say 2027. Achilles Smith, maybe you could take that opportunity then. Luke Moga, maybe Austin Novosad if he sticks around. So I think Oregon's going to be fine. There's certainly some legitimate I guess you could say, question marks about why Oregon's class is not as large. I think that if you look at the actual recruits they're getting, there's certainly no issue with getting top recruits in terms of who they're actually getting, but some of these recruits are kind of falling through the cracks now, and I'll talk about that a little bit more with Max Torres as he comes on in about 15 minutes. But for now, let's get into some news and notes because, as I said, surprisingly, on a day where the NBA just ended last Sunday and we're entering football season, college sports are over, we kind of have some things to talk about. It's not too bad. We'll start off with the Arbiter found that the NFL encouraged teams to collude regarding NFL contracts guaranteed. So this was Mike Florio and Pablo Torre who uncovered the NFL and NFL Players Association they refused to release a 61-page ruling by system arbiter Christopher Droney in the conclusion grievance regarding guarantees in the contract of certain veteran players. So this meeting happened only days after the Browns gave a 5-year, fully guaranteed $230 million contract to quarterback Deshaun Watson. And the arbiter concluded this. There's a quote. "There is little question that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, encouraged the 32 NFL clubs to reduce guarantees in veterans' contracts at the March 2022 annual owners meeting." And so it sounds like the league didn't want to concede full guarantees on a singular basis and let that lead to one by one more teams giving out fully guaranteed contracts until that becomes the norm, much like other sports. So I definitely think that's a little bit shady by, I guess you could say, both the NFL and the Players Association, because it sounds like neither one of them wanted this to be released. I certainly think that guaranteed contracts are something in the NFL particularly where you could legitimately have a 3 or 4 year career and that could be it. I think that's the average. It might even be 2 or 3 years for the average NFL player because, there's a lot of turnover. Those practice squad guys, the lower of the 55-man roster. I mean, think about the stars. They're there year for year. But there's a lot of turnover in the NFL, so these guaranteed contracts, well, yes, it starts off with the top guys, like Lamar Jackson was a big one, that there was all of these conversations about he wanted to get a guaranteed contract, and a lot of that was revealed in this ruling as well. So I think it's an interesting story to follow going forward, and I think players should probably get guaranteed contracts. Aaron Rodgers, my favorite quarterback turned NFL pariah, said, "Yep, I'm pretty sure this is it," on the Pat McAfee show today. And so that's why I did a 1-year deal. 4-time MVP signed a $13.65 million deal with the Steelers earlier this month. And that includes, we're talking about guarantees, $10 million guaranteed and can be worth up to $19.5 million with incentives. So they're going to play Green Bay he's going to play Green Bay for the first time this season. He's also going to play the Jets, so there's a lot of storylines going on there. And I think we can kind of start to, I know people will not want to do the whole year-long goodbye to Aaron Rodgers or whatever, because I'm sure that there will be questions whether or not he's actually retiring. But certainly, I think we can start to put his career into perspective, and he just needs 1,131 yards to pass Ben Roethlisberger for 5th all-time, and he would be right behind former Green Bay Packers quarterback Brett Favre. And, of course, it'd be fairly interesting to see maybe what the reaction would be like from Steeler fans and the Steelers faithful after Aaron Rodgers in a Steelers uniform, who, by the way, beat the Steelers in, I believe it was Super Bowl 45. I don't know. Don't quote me on the number, but it was 2011, that Super Bowl. The Packers beat the Steelers, so I don't know how Steeler fans are really feeling about Aaron Rodgers coming into this, but certainly it'd be interesting to see him pass Ben Roethlisberger for 5th all-time. And so it seems likely to do that unless he gets injured. He's also 5th in career touchdowns. He needs 6 to pass Brett Favre and 37 to pass Peyton Manning for 3rd. So I think he's going to obviously get past Brett. So he'll probably likely end up in 4th. 37 passing touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers in 2025. I'm not so sure about that. We'll have to see, because they certainly have some talent around him. DK Metcalf was brought into the Steelers, but I am not so sure about 37 touchdowns. Seems like they might want to be more of a balanced team than that, and I don't know if Aaron just simply has the ability to carry a team like that anymore, which is okay, because he's 41 years old. Didn't talk about this yesterday, wanted to mention it. former Oregon softball standout Paige Sinicki. She's going to be joining Utah's coaching staff. She had, of course, an incredible 4-year career with Oregon. And in 2025, she started 64 games, hit 376, 61 runs, 68 hits, with a career-high 8 home runs. And she also earned all Big Ten first-team honors and was all regional selection as well. In 2024, she was named the NFCA Rawlings Gold Glove Award winner and the Pac-12 Co-Defensive Player of the Year in the last year of the, I guess you could call it, the real Pac-12. So good on Paige Sinicki for continuing her career. I can't help but think also as well, it really is unfortunate to me. This is how I think, that Paige Sinicki's, I don't actually know how old she is, but she's got to be 22, 23, 21 years old and in the prime of her athletic life, and all of a sudden now she's coaching. And so I just think it's too bad that she doesn't get an opportunity as an athlete to continue her journey as an athlete. And, of course, she'll be helping other athletes along, which I think is amazing. And I think she's going to be a great coach because certainly with the level of skill that she had, and it wasn't just what she did, it was always her level of awareness. I mean, she was playing that shortstop position, and she knew how to play it well. She always knew where the play was, and she just was a phenomenal player. So I have no doubt at all that she'll be a phenomenal coach. I just wish I could keep seeing Paige Sinicki play softball. And I think that's probably fair. Speaking of the Diamond Sports, former All-Star pitcher Noah Syndergaard, one of the best nicknames, we're a big fan of nicknames here on the Danny and Justin radio program, is Thor, who is Syndergaard, no Syndergaard. He signed a minor league deal with the Chicago White Sox, the team confirmed on Tuesday. So you know you're not in a great place when the Chicago White Sox, excuse me, are calling you. And he hasn't played since 2023 when he appeared in 18 games between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Cleveland Guardians. Thought he might have a career resurgence there with the Dodgers, but he did not. He has a 3.71 career ERA over 8 seasons, mostly with the Mets. And man, just thinking about how good he was early in his career, he's really one of these sad pitching stories, I think, where he had a couple really good years, and then he had Tommy John surgery in 2020, as well as a Latin finger issues more recently. So he will report to Chicago's spring training facility in Glendale and then take the next steps to be a part of the major league roster. Speaking of baseball, Pedro Tatis, I thought this was really interesting. He's suing Big League Advance to void a deal signed at 17 years old. So he filed a lawsuit on Monday and with Big League Advance against Big League Advance in attempt to void the future earnings contract he signed as a 17-year-old minor leaguer that could cost him $34 million. And that's because he has a $34 million contract for over 14 seasons that he signed in 2021. So the lawsuit was signed and filed, I should say, in San Diego County Superior Court, which accuses the BLA of predatory tactics that would lure him into an investment deal that was actually an illegal loan. And they said they misrepresented themselves to Tatis, and they pushed hiding his unlicensed status and pushing him into loan terms banned by California's consumer protection laws. And even though it was not signed in California, it was actually signed in the Dominican Republic. They're arguing that it was covered under California consumer laws. So he says he's fighting this not just for himself, but for others that are chasing their dream and that are hoping to do better for their family as well. Another player, and I'm sure there's many out there that has had issues with BLA. BLA sued Padres outfielder Franmil Reyes on June 16th in Delaware Superior Court, and they claimed that he had a breach of contract, so he owes them over $400,000 in past due payments, plus $300,000 in interest. So that's yet to be determined when he's playing in Japan. So moving on to I would say a brighter story here in baseball for sure. Cal Raleigh, and we've talked about him a little bit on this program. He hit his 32nd home run for the Mariners in an 11-2 win against the Twins last night. Fourth straight game for Cal with a home run, and he is on pace to hit 40 home runs before the All-Star break, which would surpass the record of 39 by Barry Bonds during the 2001 season, when Bonds finished with a single-season record of 73 home runs. So, I mean, we're talking about rarefied air here with Cal Raleigh, who, by the way, won a platinum glove last year, so that's not just a gold glove. Gold glove means you're the best of your position. Platinum glove means that you're the best defender. They thought he was the best defender in the AL, and now he's on track to potentially pace with Barry Bonds. I mean, that's home run royalty right there. So he's been player of the week after he hit 5 home runs and 417 in 6 games last week. Of course, much of that was against my Chicago Cubs, which he gave up 4 home runs, and they took 2 out of 3 in Wrigley. He signed a 6-year, $105 million contract this spring. Maybe a little bit undersold himself when you look back at it if you're Cal. But 28 years old, so still in the prime of his career, needs just 3 more homers to match Ken Griffey Jr. for the most before the All-Star break in Mariners history. So that's a pretty cool moment for Cal Riley here and also Seattle Mariners fans. I wanted to talk about some MLB All-Star starters and the voting. And I wanted to actually look at some of the worst All-Star starters of all time. But first, I want to do a little check-in about who the leaders are for the American League and the National League. Cal Riley, of course, the catcher in the National League right now. First base is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's just leading Paul Goldschmidt of the Yankees, who's having a very nice season. Gleyber Torres of the Tigers at second base. Shortstop Jacob Wilson, the really nice rookie for the Athletics, who's being called one of the best hitters as a rookie since Ichiro Suzuki. Third base, Jose Ramirez has a huge lead over Alex Bregman. And the outfield, you have, this is really interesting, Aaron Judge of the Yankees, of course. Then you have 2 Tigers. And you say, who? 2 Tigers? Well, you have Riley Green and then Javier Baez. Yes, I will be insufferable if Javier Baez makes the All-Star game as a starter at the outfield. He is leading Mike Trout by just about 2,000 votes, 2,500 votes. So we'll see how long that lasts. And Javi, to be honest with you, I don't know if actually he deserves to be an All-Star this season just based on, he hasn't played as much as every guy. He's not quite an everyday player, but he's certainly had a lot of success, and he's a guy that I want the best for as we move forward. So Javier Baez is leader in the outfield at the American League and the National League. I'll just go over these really quickly. Will Smith is going to be the catcher for the National League and for the Dodgers. Huge lead over Carson Kelly, who's cooled down for the Cubs, and JT Realmuto for the Philadelphia Phillies. Speaking of the Dodgers, Freddie Freeman is certainly going to have a big opportunity to be the first baseman for the All-Star team. He is leading by 500,000 votes over Pete Alonso. Ketel Marte is leading at second base for the Diamondbacks. At shortstop, it's going to be a close one between Francisco Lindor and Mookie Betts, who are within about 400,000 votes of each other. And at third base, Manny Machado of the San Diego Padres. In the outfield, big vote leader here, Pete Crow Armstrong, over 2 million votes, leading the next outfielder by 700,000 votes. That's Teoscar Hernandez, who's having a great season for the Dodgers, in a sentence that I think you could say about every player. Kyle Tucker is the third leading vote getter in the outfield for the National League right now, followed shortly by Ronald Acuna Jr., who's been phenomenal since coming back from his ACL injury, and Juan Soto, who's had a very down season, but certainly even in a down season for Juan Soto is certainly nothing to scoff at. So we're going to take a quick pause, and after this break, we're going to talk to our good friend of the program, Oregon football recruiting expert, Max Torres from Scoop Duck on 3. We'll get his thoughts on Ryder Lyons and a recruiting class in 2026 that I know some fans have some concerns over. We'll see how Max feels after this. You're listening to the Danny and Justin radio program on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Back in the Bigfoot Beverages studios for more Danny and Justin as we broadcast live in Eugene and Newport. Just Justin today as we bring on our good friend of the program, Max Torres, El Toro as we call him, I should say. Max, we're now in both Eugene and Newport, so I wanted to ask, how much time did you get to spend at the coast during your time in Oregon?
I made a couple of trips out there. I went to Florence and I went to Newport. I want to say that Newport is where Rogue Brewery. And that was definitely one of the beers I like to drink while I was out there. So I made a couple of trips out there, but I think I'm definitely due for more. It's a beautiful spot.
It absolutely is, and I have to make myself go out there more as well. Rogue Brewery, you said I had to check that one out. You said maybe up in Newport, so we'll have to go and maybe catch a beer there sometime, Max. You never know. But let's head over to some Oregon football. As when Oregon missed out on Jared Curtis, there was a feeling from myself and others that maybe Ryder Lyons might make more sense for this Oregon program due to the mission year and essentially being a 2027 quarterback. Maybe that fits the timeline that Oregon's quarterbacks had. But now he's committed to BYU, and I just wanted to start you with this. How much does that hurt the Ducks to see that happen, and where do they go now?
I think if you're an Oregon fan, it certainly hurts on the surface. A 5-star quarterback from California, certainly not the first that Oregon has recruited. And I know that there was a lot of buzz for him to land in Eugene, and I had reported that there was a good shot that it was going to happen. But as this one kind of got closer and closer to decision time, I was making calls and checking with sources, and everything I was hearing led me to believe that he was going to land in Provo. So I think it hurts from that perspective, and Oregon definitely poured a lot of time into that recruitment, but I think big picture they're going to be just fine. I mean, for him being a guy who's going to take a mission trip, he's not even going to be on campus until 2027, and just with the way that quarterback recruiting and the quarterback position is going now, like most of the top tier teams have transfers anyway. So I don't think that especially coming off the mission trip, he would have maybe started right away at Oregon. So I think it's definitely a bummer, but I think Oregon's going to be just fine. They're going to get a great quarterback, whether it's one of these remaining prep guys or someone from the portal. Also have to keep in mind that Dante Moore and Austin Novosad could both come back in 2026 if they so choose. But as far as where they go from here, you're looking at Matt Ponatoski out of Cincinnati, Ohio, Moeller, and Bryson Beaver out of Vista Murrieta High School here in SoCal. Both of those guys were Elite 11 finalists. I got to see them out here in my neck of the woods last week, and they both looked really good competing and holding their own against the nation's best passers at that event. So they went from there up to Eugene for their official visits, and I think Oregon did a tremendous job with both of those guys. I tend to feel that they have a better chance at landing Beaver, than Ponatoski. And part of that is because Ponatoski is also a baseball guy. And I think that there's just, a little bit of, some more variables that come with that, with him wanting to play both sports at the next level. I'm not saying that's going to be a deal breaker, but that's certainly the factor that I think I'm weighing the most right now and kind of seeing what shakes out there. I actually put my prediction in for Beaver today to land at Oregon. So I think we were maybe going to get to that later. I don't know if you were tossing that one up for me now.
No,
but,
for sure. Go ahead.
But that's kind of where I think Oregon goes from here. Those are certainly the names that you have to watch now moving forward in the 2026 cycle.
And did you get a chance to talk to both Bryson and Matt?
I did.
And so when you get a chance to talk to these guys, do you get a sense that Oregon is selling them a plan in terms of what they're going to do that they're attracted to?
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's definitely part of the recruiting visit. I think you hear from them. I heard from them that they both spent, multiple hours with Will Stein and the coaching staff individually, of course, I assume, during those visits, just kind of breaking down their tape, letting them know how they fit into the offense, how they think that the development process is going to go once they get to Oregon. And I think one of the interesting wrinkles here, Justin, is that Stein and the Ducks usually like to avoid hosting multiple quarterbacks in the same class if they can. But given the timing of everything, they ended up both coming out to Eugene for that last official visit weekend, and it seems like they're both leaning toward making decisions probably this summer. I think Ponatoski seems a lot closer to coming off the board right now than Beaver, whose recruitment continues to just skyrocket and blow up lately. Some SEC offers coming in there. But that's kind of where I see things. And the plan, like you asked, definitely kind of comes into play during these conversations on visits.
And certainly the name Bryson Beaver. Beaver is not lost on me. I think that's an awesome name. First of all, I love beavers. I don't know if you knew that, Max, but I'm a big beaver guy in general, the animal. So obviously there's a little bit of irony to have a quarterback named Beaver as an Oregon Duck. Wanted to ask you a little bit about the 2026 class as a whole. So it's not very large, but it does have one of the highest average prospect ratings in the country. So where we are in the cycle right now, Could this still be an elite class? And how do you feel about it with where Oregon is and whom they're committed to and who they're connected to at this point?
I think this could still ultimately finish as a really good class. I think maybe it's a little subjective if you're talking about elite, but I think the mark that Oregon's going for is top 5, and that really has kind of been the expectation that I've communicated with my reporting in past recruiting cycles. I mean, there was a time when the Ducks had the number 1 class in the country, and it definitely feels like a fall from grace now with where they're at, coming in at number 9 according to the On3 Industry team rankings. And they've had a lot of misses. I mean, I'm not going to be sugarcoating it, Justin. Like, there's a lot of guys that they haven't ultimately landed that I think a lot of fans would have expected them to land. But at the same time, there's still a long way to go as far as time between now and signing day. So the real wild card here is obviously NIL, right? And I think that we're kind of seeing Oregon take a bit of a wait-and-see approach, I guess. Like, we're seeing where they're really willing to prioritize guys and kind of pour in their resources. And we know that some of their premium positions are, offensive tackle, cornerback / defensive back. You got to get those. Defensive line is certainly another one as well. So I think right now, even though Oregon has missed on quite a few guys, I'm definitely not counting the Ducks out to flip some of these top targets. They're still tied in with a lot of really elite talent that's uncommitted and committed. And I think that they're still going to be able to do some pretty special things on the recruiting trail. There's still football left to be played, Justin. I think that's something else that a lot of people maybe don't take into account, not saying that a good or bad season is going to be an end-all, be-all in these recruitments. But I think that the proof is in the pudding is part of what Oregon uses as its recruiting pitch. And I think if they have another strong season, that's only going to help them recruit even better talent.
And you mentioned the NIL, and the outside perception of Oregon is that just Oregon has always the biggest offers, and it's always about money if you go to Oregon. And, I think you mentioned it, that they're taking more of a measured approach. Is that one of those perceptions that's just much more perception than it is reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just so much conversation around NIL right now that it's like so misunderstood. I think that some people think that some recruits go to Oregon just for the money, or they go to USC or Texas A&M or Miami just for the money. And I think all those schools can certainly carry their weight as far as the NIL discussion goes. And some of those schools either are doing really well right now, or they have pretty distinguished histories that they're leaning on with some of these recruiting battles. And I think some of them are also just, the teams that are really, really relying on NIL right now with some of their recruiting classes, that they're kind of playing with fire. Like, we don't know how things are all going to shake out when this House settlement goes into effect at the turn of the month. We don't know if all of these schools, not even the ones I just mentioned, like if they're going to have checks that cash or cashable in the long run. And I think that Oregon's doing their best to stay in the mix with guys, whether they're committed or uncommitted. And then when, in the event that some of those checks don't cash, then Oregon's still going to be there and say, hey, we still want you. We've been recruiting you. And this is kind of what we view as a fair and competitive offer. So that's a whole nuanced conversation, and it's honestly been so taboo to talk about, Justin, but I've been trying to lean into it a little bit more lately and learn more about it as well, because I think to some degree it's a factor in every recruitment, but it's not an end-all, be-all for every recruit.
And I think it's so important to understand, so I really appreciate you doing that, Max. As we're talking to Max Torres, Oregon football and recruiting reporter for Scoop Duck on 3, and he's host of the Ducks Dish podcast. Be sure to subscribe to him there. Great content always. I'm always following Max and what he's putting out. Want to talk to you about Emmanuel Inacho. He's a guy that after Jackson Cantwell headed off to Miami, it kind of seems to me like maybe he's a much more, I guess I would say, where to do this. How much more important is that recruitment now, where Jackson Cantwell went off to Miami, and where does Oregon stand with him now, in your opinion?
It's a really important recruitment. I think that all eyes have kind of been on Jackson Cantwell and Emmanuel Ihenacho at that offensive tackle spot here in the 2026 class. And just being fully transparent, I thought that Jackson Cantwell was going to be the more realistic addition of the two. in this Oregon class this cycle. But even with the Missouri connections with Dan Lanning, the track and field connections at Oregon, he ended up choosing the Hurricanes and Mario Cristobal. We know, of course, Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal are two of the very best offensive line coaches in the country. So you definitely can't fault that. And then there's a lot of the NIL numbers became public. So we know that they had the best NIL offer on the table. I'm not saying that's why he chose them, but that probably played some bit of a factor. But this recruitment's huge, man. I mean, it kind of feels like, on the surface at least, the success or the strength of Oregon's offensive line class this cycle hinges on Ihenacho, but they're also involved with a couple other guys. They hosted 3-star Cal commit Kaloy Kelly for an official visit this past weekend. He's a little bit of a newer offer for Alik Terry, and I think they really moved the needle with that official visit. So I think that he could be one certainly worth watching closely. And then another Cal commit, Tommy Tofi out of San Francisco, Archbishop Reardon, he came out for an official visit as well, and that was a guy I originally had predicted to Oregon before he chose the Golden Bears, and I think that the Ducks have a great shot to ultimately win him over when all is said and done. So back to Ihenacho, I'm feeling really good about Oregon's chances there. I think that the Ducks had checked all the boxes before the official visit this past weekend. It was really just about getting the family on board and doing all that they could to overcome distance in that recruitment. And it does sound like, based on what I've been able to gather from sources and from talking to him himself, that they were able to overcome that. I think the big part being that he mentioned he's going to be able to kind of fly his family out for games, and I think that that's no small feat, seeing that he's all the way out there in Baltimore. And the state of Maryland is just producing incredible talent. So that's a really notable development for Oregon if they are going to be able to get that one done. Kind of add him to a pipeline of players that includes Ifeoma Badeglu from St. Francis out in Baltimore and Dejon Dink-Riggs from Washington, D.C., St. John's. So the DMV pipeline is growing, and I think Ihenacho would just be an unbelievable recruiting win for the Ducks.
Max Torres from Scoop Duck on 3 with us, live from the Bigfoot Beverages Studios in Eugene and Newport. Danny and Justin on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Just got a couple quick last questions for you, Max. I know you're someone that's always doing something. You're always up to something, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But you had a really interesting article, I think, out about Jalen Lott, who had a really interesting quote to me. And he said that Oregon is recruiting him, and he's an athlete, by the way, 4-star athlete out of Texas. He mentioned that Oregon coaches are recruiting him primarily at wide receiver, but to play some cornerback. Of course, Travis Hunter really became the big face of the two-way player recently. Do you think that a guy like this could be a two-way player, and are we going to see more guys like this as the time goes on?
Yeah, it's a good question, Justin, because I think that playing both ways is something that's been brought up a number of times in my years covering the Oregon beat. And I know that, like, the most recent guy that I think it was brought up for from an Oregon angle might have been Roderick Pleasant, excuse me.
There you go, yeah.
But we all know how that one ended up. He's now at UCLA, or going to be at UCLA once track season wraps up. So I think it's something that gets talked about a lot, but until somebody actually does it at Oregon, I'm not going to be putting too much stock into it. It seems like wide receiver is the position that he wants to play at the next level, even though, admittedly, sources have told me that they believe cornerback might be his best position long-term, in his college football career and beyond. But USC's got a really, really strong NIL offer out there. So now it's kind of a question of, does Oregon match that? Do they think that this is a guy that they just absolutely need this cycle? They only have one wide receiver committed in Messiah Hampton. I think that that's going to be an Oregon versus USC battle for a lot. He's deciding his future school on July 8th. He is a Texas legacy, but the latest chatter I'm hearing suggests that the Longhorns are out of it here, which is just a significant development. So I think between Jalen Lott and Calvin Russell out of Florida, those are the two names that we're kind of keeping tabs on here in the 2026 class. But it's going to be an interesting, path moving forward, because I think we could also maybe see Oregon circle back on some of their targets that are committed elsewhere. I haven't heard any of that just yet. But I think receiver is going to be probably a smaller haul this class. I mean, it only took 2 last cycle from the prep level before they brought in Malik Benson from Florida State. But that's definitely a position that's going to have a lot of eyes on it moving forward.
Yeah, it certainly is. And as my last question to you, wanted to kind of ask you about that wide receiver room in this year's team, the 2025 team. And you cover all these guys, and you do a great job for it, especially before they get to Oregon, and after they get to Oregon as well, of course. But I'm just curious of your thoughts of the receiver room. Of course, Evan Stewart going down, as we've heard, with an injury. Any of the guys that you like in that room that maybe haven't gotten a lot of shine, but you think could make an impact this season?
Sure. I mean, gosh, I think three names kind of come to mind for me. Jeremiah McClellan is a guy that Oregon signed in the 2024 class, a former Ohio State commit from St. Louis. That was a really big signing at the time. Haven't seen a whole lot from him yet, but he did have a nice catch in the spring, in his first spring game. But that's a guy that I know the staff was really excited about when he kind of got there. Jurion Dickey is another one that I'm really excited about, and I think it's kind of a make-or-break season for him. I mean, he was a former five-star recruit that the Ducks signed in 2023. We know that the wide receiver room has been pretty veteran-heavy, so I think that kind of played a little bit of a role in him not really seeing much playing time, but we also know he was hampered down by injury at various times. But I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation. You hate to have an injury, but with Evan Stewart looking like he's going to miss some time here, Ross Douglas is going to need some guys to step up, and I think Jurion Dickey rather has to be at or near the top of that list. And then kind of a wild card I'll throw in there is Cooper Perry. He's a true freshman at Oregon, but I've heard a lot of good things about him coming out of the spring. I even heard him, kind of mentioned in the same vein as a Lad McConkey. So not a guy that's, blow you away athletic or fast maybe, but I heard he was the most consistent receiver that the Ducks had in the spring. So I think that he's certainly worth keeping an eye on.
Max, always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you. You're a favorite on this program, and we'll keep up with your coverage of Oregon football, which you do a tremendous job.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Of course. Still more to come on Danny and Justin on the radio program. We'll talk about Portland's big trade and the draft. Don't turn that dial. More Danny and Justin from the Bigfoot Beverages Studios live in Eugene and Newport after this. Live from the Bigfoot Beverages Studios in Eugene and Newport. It's the Danny and Justin show on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. And I want to stand corrected. Got a message from our P1 Brad, and I want to clarify something, I guess I should say, because Paige Sinicki will be playing more softball. She will be playing for the Talons of the UAUSL, which is the Athletes United Softball League, and that is the inaugural season this year. So she is signed with them and play a 24-game slate, followed by a 3-game championship series. They've already started, so they started on June 10th, and they'll be rolling all the way until August 31st, so that'll be the last All-Star Cup game, potentially. So Paige Sinicki, if you want to see her play some more softball, I believe that will be on ESPN and ESPNU, and ESPN2. So, Paige Sinicki, you can still see her play some more softball, which is always a good deal with me. Love watching Paige Sinicki pick it out there at short. So, I wanted to talk about the Blazers, and man, what a surprise trade last night. I mean, you want to talk about a trade that came out of nowhere and one that certainly some people were not a fans of. And so I want to kind of break it down from all angles, as it was Drew Holiday making his, can you call it a return to the Northwest for the Blazers after he was traded away from the Bucks to the Blazers in, that was 2023 in the Damian Lillard trade when they acquired him. They got Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and a first-round pick in a flip for Holiday when they got him to Boston 2 years ago. That was after the Damian Lillard trade. So they're trading for Drew Holiday for Anfernee Simons and 2 first-round picks. So when I first read this trade, and I was talking to my friend about this, he's a really big Blazer fan, I was like, yeah, at least they got some second-round picks in this trade, because I think there's some arguments there with, you're trading a 26-year-old for a 35-year-old. So we'll get into that in a second, but you had to trade 2 second-round picks? Did you really need to do that? If we're looking at this trade and we're sitting here and saying, okay, if you're just doing a straight trade of Drew Holiday's on one corner, and you have on the other corner, you have Anfernee Simons, And yes, the contracts are a thing as well. And so for clarification, Anfernee Simons is on the last year of his deal. He is extension eligible. And Drew Holiday is on, I think it's a 3-year contract for $30 million a year, something like that. So it's not a great contract. I'll look that up real quick. But it's a contract that you're certainly going to have to maneuver. And so the conversation immediately came, as I look here, and he's going to be under contract for the next 2 seasons, and then he has a player option. He's a free agent, unrestricted in 2028-29. So you're looking at, under contract, at least 2 more seasons plus a player option for $30-something million a year for a 35-year-old player. And I'm not so sure that the Blazers are really going to be contending next year, which is, it's funny. We were talking to Travis Demers yesterday, the mayor, of course, and he's a good friend of the program, and I asked him, I said, hey, what do the Blazers need? If they're going to bring in a veteran, obviously they're going to get a rookie here in the draft at pick 11, which, by the way, I think changes what you do at pick 11 now that you bring in Drew Holiday. But I said, what do you need? And he said, hey, I think they need a veteran point guard. And that's something that I've looked at this team, and they have a lot of young pieces, but you can kind of see with these young teams sometimes you add the right veteran in the right spot at point guard, especially, I think. And I wasn't necessarily thinking a starter even, but I was thinking, hey, okay, you get someone at that bench that you can, you can bring in. And Travis yesterday mentioned like a Chris Paul, and I thought, good example, maybe not Chris Paul exactly, but somebody like that. But this certainly is a guy that's a backup, or not a backup, but he's certainly a veteran point guard. He certainly could be a guy that starts, and I think that's an interesting move, because now, do you start him over Scoot Henderson? I don't know. I think that's a little bit puzzling to me, because it felt like this season was going to be the year where you were going to take that step with the young guys and have them sort of lead the charge. So here's what the starting lineup could look like now. Of course, there's going to be more moves to be had. There's that number 11 pick. But as it stands right now, I'm going to say that Drew Holiday, I don't think you're trading all this for Drew Holiday not to start him. I just don't. I don't think you're going to have Drew Holiday be a bench player if you're trading away Anfernee Simons for him and 2 first-round picks. And I just saw what Desmond Bane got. Desmond Bane just got 5 first-round picks. So I'm a little bit baffled. I'm a little bit confused. Am I completely against this trade? No, but I'd like some explanation for sure. But here's how it breaks down. So have Drew Holiday, if I have him starting, he's going to be at the 1. Then you have Shaedon Sharpe, Tuamani Camara, Denny Avdia, and I'll just have DeAndre Ayton as the starting center. I think it could be him or Donovan Clingan. I think more likely it would be the veteran in DeAndre Ayton. Donovan Clingan sort of more the 20-minute per game guy last season. So unless he takes another step, then I think that he's going to be on the bench. So that's a solid starting lineup, certainly. And you have 2 guys in the starting lineup for sure that you could say, I mean, even make 3 with Denny Avdia, who's a really good defender. So at that point, you have Drew Holiday, who, again, one of the problems is Drew Holiday did decline a little bit with his defense. And how much of that was because he suffered an injury? Probably some, but the question becomes then, okay, yeah, he suffered an injury last season, but does that mean that he's not going to suffer more injuries as he gets older into his age 35, 36, and 37 seasons? I wouldn't bank on that. I would rather have a 26-year-old Anfernee Simons. That's just me. But that's a pretty solid starting lineup. You have a couple guys in the starting lineup that are really good defenders, elite defenders, and then Avdia, who is a really good defender. And then if you want to put Donovan Clingan in there as that sort of interior presence, then I think you got some really solid defense. The Blazers' defense was already one of the more solid things for them, especially in the second half last season. So off the bench then, you would have Scoot Henderson, which I think is, again, I don't think that's necessarily the right career path for him, but I don't also know why you would trade for a guy like Drew Holiday without starting him. And maybe he comes off the bench and plays 28 minutes. I don't know. But again, I think they kind of committed to Drew Holiday here a little bit, unless they're actually trading away. But maybe you have Scoot off the bench. Then you have Matisse Thybulle, Jeremy Grant, Jabari Walker, and then Donovan Clingan, and the 11 pick in the NFL at the NBA draft. So I'll kind of break down who I think might be good fits, who might not be good fits for the Blazers here in a second. So that would be if you kept Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday has been a great defender throughout his career. He did take a step back last season in terms of the offense, only averaged 11 points per game, about 4 assists per game. He's never really been a true point guard. I remember back when he was with the 76ers, he was always a great defender and a guy that could score a little bit, and he really has evolved into this just unbelievable player both ways, offensively and defensively, 2-time All-Star, 6-time All-Defensive Player, obviously the 2-time NBA champ. So he's a guy that obviously teams look at it and sit there and say, okay, we can win with this guy. And so that's where, to me, and I went through the NBA trade machine here. So I thought of a trade, okay? And I'm just throwing this out there, but I actually think this is a pretty decent trade. What about Houston, who just traded for Kevin Durant, and they're obviously going for it a little bit. We talked about with Travis Demers yesterday, they don't have a ton of depth. They certainly have some, but they don't have a ton of depth. What if you were Houston and the Blazers, and you got together, and the Blazers traded, and the numbers work here. I don't think you can trade Fred VanVleet, who I'm going to mention here in a second, basically until I think it's like the 26th of July or something like that. Like there's some, they wouldn't be able to do this right away. But what if you traded Fred VanVleet and Jabari Smith, the really talented forward that just hasn't quite put it together for the Rockets, for Drew Holiday and Robert Williams II. And so Robert Williams II, okay, his value I think is maybe a little bit up in the air. You could throw some other assets in there as well. I don't know how many second-round picks you have now, but you certainly have pick 11 if you want to throw that in there. But I think if you're looking at it from both angles, okay, if you're the Blazers, you're trading away a 35-year-old and Robert Williams II, who has been one of those signings which was like a really great try, but it just hasn't worked out for anybody because of the injuries. And let's not forget that Drew Holiday and Robert Williams the second were literally on the same starting lineup when I guess it was in the finals, but they didn't win the championship. I guess it was against the Warriors, and Robert Williams got traded out after that. But still, they were in the finals together on the same starting lineup. We saw those two players doing legitimate things that you need to do to be in a rotation when the rotations get cut to 9 players, 8 players, 7 players in some cases. So I think that for the Rockets, you're getting Drew Holiday, who I think is considered by many to be a championship-level point guard. Maybe he has a couple of those seasons left. And Robert Williams II, who is a solid bench center for you, who can do a little bit all defensively. And you have a guy like Şengün, who's really different than that. Like, I like how different you have a backup when you have a kind of guy like that, right? You don't want to have another Şengün type, right? Like another guy that's a great passer, sort of offensive type player. I think that Robert Williams would make sense as a backup. And you're getting rid of Fred VanVleet, who has a huge contract. He's like a $40 million contract. And it kind of still fills with the Blazers. You're getting Fred VanVleet, so he could be like a bench player, I think, at this point for the Blazers. And you have, that would make much more sense to me. You have Scoot starting at that point, and then you have Fred VanVleet as the backup at that point. And then you add Jabari Smith, who, again, he hasn't quite put it together for the Houston Rockets, but man, I mean, he has all the potential in the world, and he just seems like one of those guys that you want to add to your team and kind of just see what happens next. So if I'm the Blazers, I'm definitely looking to flip Drew Holiday. I don't know how much he fits right now. Certainly, I could see it, and if they're going to add some more win-now pieces, then I maybe could see that going forward. I want to mention real quick here, just got about a minute, with the draft coming up tomorrow, some fits I like, some fits I don't like. I'm just going to throw this one out here. Ace Bailey, I don't know, make it happen. It sounds like he's kind of making some problems for himself with his interviews and not meeting with teams or whatnot. So, hey, find a way to get Ace Bailey. I think Derek Queen would be a nice selection. Maybe you could trade away DeAndre Ayton. I was thinking that Kasparas Jakusionis, point guard out of Illinois, might be a good selection. But now when you have Drew Holiday, I don't think that really makes sense. But this is a really good draft, I think, for what the Blazers kind of need, which are some of these longer wings. And Asa Newell, the power forward from Georgia, really strong, athletic kid, certainly could be the kind of guy that could add to this team. I don't think a guy like Mulak, the center from Duke, makes much sense. But we'll see what the Blazers do. The draft is tomorrow, so it'll be fun to watch that, and it will be fun to have Danny back on the program tomorrow. So he'll be back after a long journey. We'll catch up with him tomorrow. We'll talk about the draft, and we'll fill you in on some other fun stuff that happens in the world of sports. So you've been listening to the Danny and the Justin Show, Just Justin today on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. See you tomorrow.